Welcome to episode 24 of Keep Blooming. I'm your host, Liz Montigny. If you have children or grandchildren between the ages of 2 and 22, this episode is for you. We are going to be diving into a pretty big topic called Theology of the Body. If you don't know what it is, tune in to learn more about it and how you can share it with your kids. And to help us do that, I have a wonderful guest on the show. Her name is Lindsay Caron. She founded Theology, the Body Parent School back in 2020, and she has created TOB Monthly, which is a magazine that empowers parents to teach their own children about the gift of our personhood and sexuality. So if you've been trying to figure out how to have those tougher conversations, this episode is for you. And I love Lindsay's story about how she took this really kind of meaty and big idea and broke it down into steps to make her vision a reality. And she has so much more to come in her organization. So let's get growing and keep blooming. Do you want simple steps to level up your mind, body, and spirit, or encouragement as you navigate the challenges of motherhood? Or maybe you need a dose of hope to achieve that goal? Then you've tuned in to the right podcast. This is Keep Blooming, and I'm your host, Liz Montigny. Each week, I'll encourage you to drop the hustle mentality for hope and act on the dreams God has put on your heart. I'm a licensed Ziegler life coach. I've created a theater ministry, and like you, I'm doing all the things as a Catholic, a wife, and a mom to 3 boys. So let's get growing and keep blooming. Welcome to Keep Blooming. I'm your host, Liz Montigny, and today I am so psyched to welcome a guest on the show. She is Lindsay Caron. She is the founder of the Theology of the Body Parent School, and she is the creator of Theology of the Body Monthly magazine. And we connected through Lilia Grundy, who is founder of the Catholic Women Professionals Group. If you listened to episode 21 of this podcast, you got to know Lilia there. And she was kind enough to connect me with Lindsay. And I was super excited when I heard about Theology of the Body, because even though being a cradle Catholic and a huge JP2 fan, I am not all that schooled in that area. I'll be honest. And I have 3 boys who are 12, 11, and 9. So I need to talk about this. I need to talk about Lindsay. So talk with Lindsay. And some of you may be listening with that as well. But the other great thing about that is I feel like Theology of the Body covers all seasons of our lives. And we'll talk about a little bit about that too. So if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you know I like to kick off our conversations with a little Lectio Divina. So today I'm taking it way back to Genesis chapter 1, verse 27. God created mankind in his image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. So this sounds like a pretty simple, straightforward one verse, right? But first of all, when you read it on the page and hear it, 2 things pop out. In the image of God, he created them. That is said twice. I feel like that's how important we are. Okay. And also what pops out is, of course, that we were created in God's image. And whether we're talking about how we take care of ourselves mentally, physically, and spiritually on a daily basis, or whether we're talking about culturally and socially and everything that's going on in the world right now, and how well we are taking care of ourselves there. I mean, there is a lot happening. So we are created in God's image. Are we acting like that on a daily basis? It's something to think about. Lindsay, welcome. What else do we need to know about you right now?
Hi, thanks for having me, Liz. You covered a lot of it very well. Thank you. I would just say that theology of the body, yes, it does. It addresses the whole lifespan. And a lot of people think that it may have to do with just sexuality. And then another area is that it may have to do with pro-life, in which it does. But what we do is we create these really user-friendly materials that parents can go through with their children in all age groups from 2 to 22. And I'll tell you what those age groups are in a little bit. But what I like to point out first and foremost is that those two topics, being pro-life, sanctity of life in the womb, and then human sexuality and the gift of that, are really just two components of 8 that we cover. And so theology of the body really originated by teaching that we are body and soul, and that the body reveals the soul, or we also say the body reveals the person. So those two things are interconnected always. And then we talk about the state of the soul, talk about the state of the body and how they affect one another. Really through our magazine, though, we focus on kind of current cultural trends, because you can get those other teachings through theology books and theology of the body study guides. But what we try to do is put that modern cultural lens on everything, so that a parent dealing with a situation that's going on in their kids' public school right now has the tools to deal with that now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so important. And I love this whole idea of the body and spirit connection, because I think so many of us disconnect that, like they're separate things, but no, we're a holistic being. We're everything. And when I work with my clients, I always say, if you can get mind, body, and spirit kind of humming along those other areas of your life, relationships, career, personal time, all that stuff kind of comes along for the ride. So I love that. So tell me a little bit more about that body spirit connection. What do you mean by that?
Well, we'll break it down in each of the issues based on the topic of that issue. So let's say if you're looking at the issue of gender ideology, and that for us is out of the 8 magazines that someone would get over the course of 1 year, that would come up in issue number 3, where we talk about the standard of the male and female body being, a gift, being beautiful, how they're made, being complementary to one another. And so we might look at that issue and say, okay, if let's say in the middle school version, if all of your friends all of a sudden are going through this questioning that they might have been born in the wrong body, what else might be going on? What might be going on in their soul? What might be going on in the social fabric around them? There's a lot of studies that relate, they call it the gender rapid onset dysphoria, and how that is so closely connected to social media use and peer influence. And so that these dysphorias can happen and these gender anomalies can happen in the body, but what we're dealing with and what we're seeing right now is more than the body. It is a spiritual phenomena that's happening amongst, especially young people, middle school, teenage years. And so that is something that's happening with the soul. Yeah. And then it comes out through actions of the body.
That's a really good point. And, as you're talking here, I'm just thinking, when I was growing up, so just showing my age here, I was in the 80s. So, JP2 was my Pope. He was alive, but my parents were on the older side of things. They were kids during World War II. So, now don't get me wrong, I'm not bashing my mom and dad here or anything like that, but they just didn't have like these tools.
Yeah.
And it sounds like what you've created and what you're sharing are just really accessible and really needed, because I want to do better. That's always the goal, just do better for your children. Yeah. And I think there's just so much confusion out there, as you say, culturally about what's going on, but also there's confusion just around like how do we still be Catholic and charitable to those people who are suffering in these kinds of situations? So it sounds like the magazine, it sounds like you kind of take a topic at a time. Is that right?
Mhm. That's right. So thank God for JP2, who
Yeah.
who put all of the theology and all of the philosophy and academic thinking around this teaching. The teachings and the reflections, they really originated in scripture. And then John Paul II was reflecting on things that Jesus taught way back when. So he
Mm-hmm.
didn't come up with anything new. He just
Right.
said, wow, there's such wisdom in the scripture on body and person. And even the scripture of if you look at a woman with lust in your eyes, you've committed adultery in your soul. So that's one of them, where he said,
Mm,
hey, your body is acting in one way, but where does it come from? It comes from the soul. So anyway,
yeah.
I like to always put that in there because our Protestant friends may think this is just a teaching of a pope. Really, it comes from Jesus. Then John Paul puts all of this structure and framework around it in the late 70s, early 80s. So that's amazing and beautiful, but it is so theological still. So then to get to your question, these 8 themes, thankfully in 2000, I think it was 2019, 2 organizations came together to standardize the theology of the body. And the theology of the body from John Paul was given in talks over the course of 5 years. So it's now in an anthology that's over 630 pages of pretty meaty stuff.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
these organizations, one is the Cardinal Newman Society, and they exist to keep Catholic education Catholic. And then the other is Rua Woods Press, and they are one of the original Theology of the Body school curriculum companies. And so they came together in 2019 and they standardized the whole teaching into these 12 teaching standards, which is a total gift to the rest of us who want to make materials. We don't have to sift through 630 pages. We go through 12 standards.
Yeah.
And then what my organization did is we we took the 12 down to 8 just by combining some of those standards that were really like-minded. And then for each of those 8 themes, we produced a 8-page mini magazine, and that's what's called TOB Monthly. And so you actually, in the course of a subscription over the course of a year, you would actually get 8 of these. And, they're only 8 pages. So if you take one every 6 weeks, and we did it in 8 instead of 12 so that parents can take summer off, or, there's not
Right.
such a pressure to have to do it all year.
Mm-hmm.
But you can do it in any pace that's right for you as the parent. And it's very, very easy to access. Colorful images, the kids can write directly in the magazine. The parents are learning alongside, so they don't have to do anything to learn in advance. There's a short little theology section on the first page always.
Yeah.
And then the rest is just interactive, question and answer between child and parent, and a lot of images, because images speak to kids. A lot of, like for the middle school age, a lot of short blurbs and memes and comics and humor. And we just try to meet them exactly where they are at their age group.
I so appreciate so many things you said in that. So, especially when we're talking about some of these themes here, sexuality and what's going on in the culture and so forth, to a parent, it can feel really overwhelming. Like, where do I even begin? How do I even have this conversation? And as I always tell my clients, when we're working on a goal or whatever challenge that we're going through, it's like, you got to take it step by step. So I really appreciate that you break it down. It's like you've done all the research and done all the compiling and you've broken it down for us. So I love that. And it does sound very interactive. So that's a huge, huge gift. So Lindsay, I'm really curious, how did you come together and put all of this together? Like, what was the catalyst to say, we have to do this?
It was, it was 2020 and I had 3 little boys, and my youngest was nursing. So I was on the couch a lot. I was gifted with this time that I don't usually get to, scroll through the news, scroll through my phone, scroll through articles. I'm very blessed to have a dad who's very active in like the Catholic news world. And so pulling articles and sending those to me and my sisters about things going on in the world outside of what mainstream news would be presenting. So I kind of felt like inundated with that harsh reality all at once, and with these three little boys, and had the time to soak in this information. And a lot of it was coming on the this movement of drag queen story times, and a lot of articles. And then I actually got an invite from our local county library to a drag queen story time for my children. And I just, it just was like a light switch went off. Was I can't sit here and do nothing, and I've been in Catholic work my whole life. I have Catholic education as a background. I was a teacher, and I have a school administration degree. And so I've always known it was going to be something like that when I got back into the workforce after having kids. But that was really the catalyst, was like, oh, wow, the culture really has gone somewhere else quite fast. I don't think there's a solution that I know of that a tool that I can use as a parent who's busy and like maybe not fully catechized on this stuff myself. And that was the catalyst. And then I just started meeting with other like-minded moms locally at first who agreed, yeah, something has to be done. And we had all had a different experience or exposure to theology of the body in the past. Mine was very minimal, actually. Just 3 years ago, I had gone to one church class on it maybe a decade ago. And it just was a seed in the back of my head where I thought, I think that's the answer. I don't know how, but that for kids is going to be the opposite of what this, the story time thing is. And that's how it started. And I'd say within about 6 months of forming with, about a half a dozen women locally who believed the same thing, the idea was born of these magazines. And so we just started work on those. And we worked probably nearly 2 years on just creating, editing, making sure we had the right people on our team to give it, every official flavor that it could have. We had doctors, psychologists, we have one of the lead theologian pastors in our diocese edit everything, and worked hard on that for 2 years. And now it's ready, and we sell it, and we're getting into marketing and sharing and trying to get it around the country.
Wow, I love that. There's a lot going on there, and just for women that are listening, I always talk about, acting on the dreams that God has put on your heart. And I heard a couple things in there. Like, one is you knew this was like a talent and an area of interest for yourself, and you also saw a need, and you got other people involved to help you make it a reality. And yeah, it took some work. It's taking you a couple of years. Of course it would. This is a big undertaking, and it's a big topic and so needed. So I just appreciate hearing that process, and I just want to remind those of you listening, it's worth it. It's always worth it. And now you also have a school. Is it okay? Tell me a little bit.
Yeah, I'll explain that. Our word school is just a clever term. So we do not have a physical school. We just knew we needed to name our organization something that indicated to the parents that we want the parents involved, and we want the parents learning and teaching. And so school is just a word to kind of capture what we're trying to do with and for parents. We want parents to be empowered to reclaim their right and responsibility as the first and most formative teachers of their children. So even if at their Catholic school or homeschool co-op, they may be getting a theology of the body curriculum, that's great. I feel like children in the culture that we're in right now need, 20 layers of this. So 1 is good, 2 is better, 3, keep going. I mean, that's what the culture is doing. It's the culture is going to surround your children with 500 layers of the opposite teaching. So don't stop at 1. Don't think, oh, they've been exposed to this teaching. Keep going. Keep adding on. Yeah. And really the parent, it needs to come from the parent. It needs to come from them. It can come from school too. It can come from church group too. Yeah.
No, that's huge. Now, what would you say to the woman listening who, maybe she has kids in college or adult children, and, maybe she feels like, oh, I kind of missed the mark here, or I want to start these conversations,
Mhm.
with my older children. What would you say to that? Is there, just go use your resources? Like what would you say to them?
Well, good news for moms who have kids in college, because we have a campus version. So
Nice.
our age groups go from 2 to 22. So we have 5 age groups, and that would be littles, age 2 to 5, kids 6 to 9, middles is 10 to 13, teens is 14 to 18, and then campus is 19 to 22. So also, I believe the campus would fit for young adult too. So anybody who has recently graduated into their mid
Yeah.
20s, even all of us would benefit
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
from the campus version.
Right. Right.
It's great. But then I would say if you're on to the next stage where your kids are older and maybe have their own kids and you're talking about grandkids,
Mm.
um, remember to tread lightly. I've had a few young grandmas come to me and say, I brought this to my daughter-in-law and now she won't talk to me.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's a really big teaching. And so I would just read the room and know who you're dealing with. If it's a daughter-in-law, son-in-law situation, like just make sure that you're respectful and bringing it there, because it could do the opposite if you gift it.
Mm.
And they feel that they've been, toes stepped on.
Hmm.
It could turn them from this beautiful teaching. And I think people assume that it's some form of a Catholic sex ed, and that those people don't want anything to do with it. But if you just open the first page of the first magazine, they see that it's so much more than that, and they will be drawn in by the beauty, the goodness, the modern freshness of what's on the layout. So I would say buy them yourself and have them laying around your home, and just
Right.
have them on your coffee table,
Yeah.
have them open, or buy it and say you're doing it with, not just say, but actually do it with a church,
Hmm.
catechism
Hmm.
group that's willing.
Hmm.
And then you can say to your children who have children, I'm doing this, at St. John the Apostle catechism, or I brought this to the lead catechist there and they are loving it,
Yeah.
instead of I have this solution for you to teach your
Hmm.
children. Yeah.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's always plant the seed and then be the
Yeah.
witness
Yeah.
and just the invitation. Yeah, yeah, that's
Mhm.
great. That's really, really helpful. So,
Yeah.
Lindsay, tell me what is some of the feedback you're getting, either, just from the magazines or whatever. Tell us more.
Yeah. Well, one exciting thing that I like to share, I said we were kind of eyeballs deep in content creation for 2 years. So we were not focused on marketing and sharing the word. But as we started selling the first age groups that we made available, we made them available just because they needed to be out there. We didn't wait until all 5 were done. And in the course of the time, I think about a year and a half, that the early age groups were available, we made sales of this magazine in 40 states, and that was with no marketing.
Mm.
So I think that feedback tells me, there's a total hunger for this, because
Hmm.
the only way that people are finding us without a big marketing strategy is word of mouth. Maybe someone buys it in Ohio and then tells their sister-in-law in Florida, and then it goes that way. And then also searching. So people are hungry and searching, maybe theology of the body or Catholic sexuality teaching for kids or something, and we pop up. So that feedback, being nonverbal, is my favorite, I would say, just because
Yeah.
I know, it's meeting a need for people. And then otherwise, people just are really loving that it's super easy to use. Very
Yeah.
easy to use. Yeah. You just open it up and plop through a page or two with a kid and put it
Yeah.
aside, and do 2 pages another week. And it's really easy.
That's wonderful to hear, because I think some of us just get stuck in the overwhelm of it all, and we don't move forward. But if you know step-by-step process, and like you said, you're not doing 12, you're doing 8, so there's a little breathing room, and
Yeah.
and that's really key. And I think it's amazing that this is really grown by word of mouth. And like you said, people are obviously looking for this. So I know we have all the information in the show notes, so people can get what they need and connect with you. And Lindsay, tell me more about what's on the horizon here. What else do we need to know about this amazing resource?
Sure. So, the 5 age groups are available now on our website, and they actually have all been translated to Spanish. But what's on the horizon is that we're also established as a 501c3. And so we need to raise funds in order to support our first print run, to get the Spanish out there. So I just put that out there because I know somebody who is going to want this out there for Spanish will step forward and help donate the funds for that. So everything is translated, ready to go. And then in the next couple of years, we're going to create cycles B and C of what we have already created. So then that way, if you have a child in a particular age group at the bottom end of that age group, you can have fresh content every year for them before they graduate on to the next age group. So I would say, if anybody has a creative mind and wants to join our team and help with content creation, it's really fun. And we are always open to new creative people joining us. And then finally, we're going to work on some supplementary issues as well. So one of those would be like the puberty issue, because that's not actually included in Theology of the Body, because it's not a Catholic sex ed, but we are going to work with some people who do teach that from a Catholic perspective, and for parents who want to go deeper and who are ready to have the talk. And everything is age appropriate. So we'll even have a version of that for age 2 to 5, but it won't go too far. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And by middle school and high school, you'll be seeing all the body parts that you would see in another sex ed program, but through a Catholic lens.
Yeah. Oh, good. So helpful. So helpful. Excellent. Well, Lindsay, this has just been so great to connect with you. I'm so glad for this resource. I know my family is going to be subscribing, definitely, because like you said, they're being bombarded and we're the parent, and we need to help them navigate all this and make sure it's with love and respect and charity, and just the love of the beautiful gift that our body is. I mean, you really think about that and how to treat yourself well, So that is fantastic, and it's just been a pleasure. So thank you, Lindsay.
Thank you so much.
So it's time to come back to our scripture passage for today's episode, and that is from Genesis, chapter 1, verse 27. God created mankind in his image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. How beautiful is that? We are in the likeness of our Creator. How are we, respecting our own bodies? How are we being respectful and charitable to our family, our friends? Are we grateful for this gift of our body and soul? And how are we witnesses to that? So, if this seems like an overwhelming topic, but one that you feel like you really need help with, whether that's personally or with your family, with your children or grandchildren, you now have this amazing resource at your hands. So be sure to check the show notes for how to get TOB Monthly. And thank you again, Lindsay, for joining us. Let's get growing and keep blooming. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Keep Blooming. Tune in every Wednesday for a dose of hope and encouragement. You can find this podcast on Anchor, Spotify, and Google and Apple Podcasts. To be the first to know about my upcoming retreats and latest offerings, be sure to hop onto my email list. Have a wonderful week, and remember to keep blooming.